Oh, hi. My name is Clodagh. I'm your host for this video, which is being created as part of the AN Artists Council Artists Make Change programme, which we are delighted to be a part of. I say we because I'm here to talk to you about the Northern Irish-based artist collective that call themselves Array, of which I am a part of. So the Array Collective is now an 11-strong group. We all have our own individual art practices, but we work a lot together collaboratively. So we work on various projects such as protests, rallies, workshops, exhibitions, events. Normally we're based on one floor of a building in Belfast City Centre, but now of course we're all in lockdown. It's my crooked fringe. So we're all based in our own individual video boxes on the internet. So as I said, there's 11 of us in total. So without further ado, here we all are. Oh!
Stephen Miller.
Hi, I'm Laura O'Connor.
Grace McMurray.
Hi, I'm Jane Butler.
Alessia Carnelli.
Mitch Gunn.
Sinead Brannock Cashel.
Hello, I'm Thomas.
Sheila Brannock Cashel.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our activist approaches and apologise for any street noise or any toddler noise you might hear in the background. So, Array describe ourselves as a collective, and we collaborate using activist approaches, and we have a non-hierarchical informality, which is a self-valued strength and builds on our current modes of intervention. We try and hitch our anger to that of the many disenfranchised groups that we're also a part of, and highlight the serious consequences of ambivalence towards us all by those in power, and we try and use play and humour. We are all constituents or allies of the communities that we protest with and make art about. Our collective art actions vary from street interventions and performances to protests to hosting banner making, symposia, having guest activists speaking, creating community and solidarity online, and finally making art about and including our activism. I think what's key, however, is that we're not simply parachuting in and making one-off pieces about activism or attending sporadic rallies. We are all deeply politically involved in the social and political ecology within which our art collective exists. In Northern Ireland, religio-ethnic identity is prized above all other identities. We're fractured and confused into manipulative narratives, and we're eager as a group to try and reclaim and review the dominant discourse, to try and create a new mythology for the growing number of people who don't prescribe to those embedded political dichotomies. It's partly why we've organised within or alongside issues such as queer liberation, abortion rights, mental health, gentrification, the Irish language, eco-politics, British colonialism and social welfare. All of these go beyond the core values of the group. They're the water that we swim in. Some of us are organisers or activists in our own right within these groups, and well beyond our role as artists. And not only has our collective way of working encouraged an even greater level of support and cross-fertilisation in our practice, but also in our activism. Judith Butler says the power that people have to gather together is itself an important political prerogative, quite distinct from the right to say whatever they have to say once people have gathered. The gathering signifies in excess of what is said, and that mode of signification is a concerted bodily enactment, a plural form of performativity. At the 2018 International Women's Day March brandishing Sheila na Gigs, we paraded the street to express ancient Ireland's right to choose, reclaiming her as a symbol of resistance and freedom. This carved stone figure opening her exaggerated vulva predates Christian church bigotry. It was cheeky, it was received joyously, and yet it spoke so directly to the British power which was still held over our bodies. One of the most often used is a bright pink banner we have declaring "Stop ruining everything." It has been at Reclaim the Night, Save Cathedral Quarter, Pride, International Women's Day, and as part of the last exhibition in Platform Arts Belfast before the building was shut down by developers forever. It perfectly illustrates how we adapt and reshape art into activism and vice versa. We're proud of our humour and wield it mercilessly, whether through our slogans, our exhibitions, or when we take to social media, but we're only ever punching up. Pablo Higuera talks about the French medieval Feast of the Ass in his Education for Socially Engaged Art, where social hierarchies are temporarily broken through satire, celebration and chaos. He said, "The Feast of the Ass is not only an inversion of social roles, but meanings and interpretations within a discipline. What Array tries to do is much like this carnivalesque approach to an agenda. He carries on, not accurate representation, but rather the complication of reading so that we can discover new questions. It is when we position ourselves in those tentative locations and when we persist in making them into concrete experience that interstices become locations of meaning." Thank you.
Hi again. Thanks to Emma there for that lovely piece on how Array functions as a collective and the processes we go through. You might be wondering, oh, what's she wearing? And you might also have gathered from Emma's segment that dressing up and the use of costume is a huge part of what we get up to. Often our costumes can be made in a kind of quick-fire responsive way, depending on how much notice we've got or what the type of event or rally is that we're going to. It could be weeks before, a week before, the night before, the morning of, that we get to make our costumes and banners. But this piece signifies something slightly different. So last year we were invited by Gerwood Arts to be part of an exhibition called Collaborate, and it was us and 3 other artist collectives from across the UK. Our contribution was called As Others See Us, and it took the form of an installation with lots of other elements intertwined. The difference in this occasion was there was a whole pile of thought and consideration put into the use of costume through the development of characters. And next up we have the wonderful Thomas Wells, who's going to tell you all about that.
What we set out to do with the project was to develop a number of original characters inspired by pre-Christian folklore of ancient Ireland. These characters were to be crossbred with contemporary anxieties particular to the north of Ireland. The 3 characters that were developed of the Sacred Cow, the Morrigan and the Long Shadow were debuted in public at the 2019 Belfast Pride Parade to a confused but enthusiastic response. The characters were developed collectively, drawn from a number of folklore tales and kind of personal experiences. From the beginning we knew we wanted to take these characters to London and showcase them within the capital and the space of power and responsibility of Westminster. What was interesting in juxtaposition to the response at the Belfast Pride Parade was that there was almost little to no reaction to us in public in the kind of city centre. We thought this was really interesting in light of the lack of knowledge and awareness of social and human rights issues that have not been afforded, or as at the time were not afforded to the region. We wanted the 3 characters to explore a kind of a loose history of the unafforded rights to the people of Ireland. We were at the time of production or development in the midst of 2 major pieces of legislation to change those. The costumes themselves took on a anthropomorphic kind of look. We kind of wanted to create these characters that were able to kind of roam the kind of streets of London and Belfast whilst looking kind of surreal, but also would kind of blend into the surroundings as much as they could. We started in ancient Ireland with the Sacred Cow. This character became to represent the land, the body's relationship to the land. The cow itself became to represent an unbiased opinion to the body, to the queer, to the non-binary. It looked at striding to embrace a forgotten nourishment. looking back at kind of folklore traditions of the cow in Ireland. And also it's reminded us of the cyclical nature of progress. There is a continued, almost tyrannical language used in Northern Ireland in the discussion of LGBTQ plus peoples, with a continued narrative of not being welcome. Played by Stephen and Grace, we started on the Pride Parade as a joyous, almost deity-esque character, reveling in their home land. Stephen's kind of portrayal of the Long Shadow during the parade probably got the most, or the biggest kind of reception. What we see when we took the character to London, which mirrored a journey done by thousands of Irish peoples in the search for work, for survival, was a loneliness that kind of came from that, and the racism and violence that was created. One of the consequences of such a long conflict here in Northern Ireland is the increase in suicides. This really carried through in the character's portrayal, especially in London, as some moments were incredibly emotional as we saw a character alone, suffering, and ultimately lost in the metropolis. The third character, played by Emma, was the Morrigan. This character was taken directly from the Tales of the Morrigan, this shape-shifting entity that has depictions in a number of folklore traditions. The three elements of the Morrigan represent the Virgin, the Mother, and the Hag, of which, through the journey that Emma takes throughout the film, each one of those phases is represented through the costume and the movement, and eventually the spaces that they are in, and mirror the journey, the kind of the painful journey of women and pregnant people. Or the Virgin appears joyful, optimistic, but also as this warrior character, with the optimism of changing. What was really clever decision by the team was to mirror some of the architecture around the costume. There is a section in the film, quite subtly, where Emma, and as the mother, is mirroring the architecture of one of the tall buildings in London, that almost looks pregnant. We finally get to a real kind of emotional moment in the film of the Morrigan, as the aged, tired, shamed woman marches across Westminster, a busy Westminster Bridge, but we got to collectively kind of share in the physical pain and struggle of the character, walking up to Parliament Square. It ends beautifully with Emma sitting on the steps of the chamber to the Commons, or I think the entrance to the Chamber of the Commons, crying, and a song plays over the top by a queer performer in Belfast, Danny, and I think everything just combinated in a really lovely kind of moment that kind of tied all the characters together and really tied the project together for us.
Oh, hi. Thanks to Tom there for that great explanation on our development of characters and our use of costume for our last exhibition. So what makes Array effectively work so well is that we all play to our own individual strengths. There are 11 of us after all, and although we do share similar political views, we aren't all the same, but everybody brings something different and something valuable to the table. We also just really get along together. We socialise together, we socialise in the studios together. We always say that wherever we are, wherever Array is, there'll be a wig and a gig somewhere nearby. So to conclude and to sum up the ways in which Array tries to make and implement change, I'd like to read you our 3 house rules. So number 1, welcome, host and treat others in a friendly, supporting way. Number 2, get out and campaign with your local activist groups. And number 3, have a gag. That's spelled G-E-G. It's basically the Belfast equivalent of LOL, have a laugh. So that pretty much sums up our presentation for the AN Artists Council Artists Make Change programme. So thank you so much for watching. Woo! Wigs and gigs!